Good morning, everybody. Let folks take a second to get logged in and get situated. It's day two. We're super excited that you're here. And I'm going to advance my slides a little bit here. We're going to start off with some opening remarks. Again, I'm going to give just folks a minute or two to get in the door, so to speak. And really excited to see everybody here again this morning and some new faces, the folks that maybe weren't here yesterday or here for part of yesterday. So welcome to you and welcome back to the others. Yesterday was amazing. Really excited to see all the participation. We had fabulous questions and such, and we'll do a little bit of a recap here this morning. Let's go ahead and get into today's opening remarks. So I thought it was worthwhile maybe just kind of giving you all a little bit about my story, and I don't want to take too long on this, but I think there could be some value in just sort of hearing my story and how I got into this situation and why am I not, practicing in the clinic anymore or in the hospital. How did I make that transition? As a physician, it might be slightly different, but it's a lot of very similar themes. And I'll just say I have a real reaction to people giving introductions. This is an interesting story because if you've made the transition into industry or remote nursing or been in situations where you're dealing with people from a corporate type of environment, you'll maybe get a kick out of this. So my first year out of clinics, basically when I was working in Silicon Valley, I'd get invited to meetings with external people or even internal people, and there was that moment when everyone's going around the table and introducing themselves. And I was so used to sort of the academic environment of medicine where it's all about the credentials and the certifications and the trainings and the where you've been. For about the first year, I just like would introduce myself with this really prolonged, like, hi, I'm here. I went to this school, I went to that school, I got this training, I got that degree, I got this fellowship, I did that, and now I'm this and I'm working in this and I like these things and my dog's name is this and I like to surf and skateboard and I'm this whole it's like ridiculously overly long introduction to where they're like, we have like 5 minutes left in the meeting. Can we like get on to the meeting? But I quickly learned that the introduction in that setting, it doesn't, nobody cares. They're all reviewing their notes anyway. And so what I recommend is that you don't make the mistake I made with introductions, but that you just say like, hey, I'm Dr. Pollard. I'm head of medical affairs. Great to be here. Just keep it to your title. Really, that's all you need to say. If somebody cares to ask you more about who you are, what you did, or what your credentials are, why you're in this meeting, they'll ask you. But 99% of the time, they'll just say like, oh, cool, he's the doctor at the table. All right, great. Let's move on. And I'll just say one more thing about that because there's a lot of questions about your ability. We talked about this a little bit in the Hangout. And by the way, the Hangout was fantastic last night. Thanks everybody for participating. This came up where it's people are going to potentially you're going to think people are doubting your skills or your justification for being at the table. And just know this: as soon as you say, I'm Joanne Barkley and I'm a registered nurse. I'm Jeff Pollard and I'm a registered nurse. Then that's it. That's all you need to say. I'm Jeff Pollard. I'm a registered nurse and I'm on the medical affairs team. Done. Okay. That's all the credibility you need to lay out for them. And then I need you to feel confident that you're supposed to be there. You're there because the company that you work for values you and has put you in the situation of being at that table in that moment because they needed those medical chops at the table, and everyone else around the table. When you speak, you're going to be an authority in medicine because guess what? Nobody else around that table has any freaking clue about anything in medicine. They're all business people, they're engineers, they're product people, they're designers, they're financial people. And so when you speak, that will become the word of medicine in that meeting room. And so just know that you're going to have impact, embrace that, be confident, don't over explain yourself. Just it is what it is, and they can't challenge. They want to challenge that, fine, go ask other people. But like in that moment, that's the authority. And so anyway, that's my little two soapbox things. So my introduction is now like way overly done here. But I started out as a as a young lad. I grew up in this area, San Francisco area here in California. I liked using my hands. I like really wanted to use my hands. I had a penchant towards health, and I kind of acclimated towards the sciences in school. And so it wasn't too surprising, like many people, that sort of led to thinking about a career in medicine. healthcare and for sure. And so I went off to Duke University and quickly got swept up into pre-med activities there. And before I knew it, I was on that track. And then I actually took a year off after Duke because I was like, do I really want to do this? I mean, I kind of teed myself up to do it. I got a pre-med and a health psychology degree at Duke. And I took a year off. I actually worked at Stanford in a cardiothoracic transplant surgery lab doing heart transplants on guinea pigs and rats and hamsters and even like monkeys and stuff, and really helping out on that. And I really thought like, wow, I can do medicine and use my hands as a surgeon. So I really gravitated towards that, and I said yes. I did want to go to medical school. I went to Vanderbilt, and then I decided to go into ENT because I was really captivated by technology. And as many of you know who've been on the med surg floors and such and seen ENT patients, there's so many, and worked in the operating room. Like there's so many gadgets with ENT that I loved. I love technology. I loved being on the cutting edge, operating with a microscope and lasers and image guided surgery and building ships in a bottle inside somebody's little ear, working on someone's larynx, or, removing half of somebody's face with head and neck surgery. So lots of amazing things happened in ENT, and I gravitated towards that. I did my ENT training at Stanford. And then I decided that I also really liked business, and back to my roots of psychology, because I was a health psychology major. I decided that plastic surgery, that's an interesting way how those things all triangulate around plastic surgery. But plastic surgery really is, 80% business, 18% surgery, and like 2% psychology. Or you rearrange those in whatever order you want. You could probably substitute any of those for any of those percentages, and it would still make sense. But I really gravitated towards plastic surgery, so I did a residence or a fellowship at Tulane in that. And then, so yeah, I read the surgery business and psych. We kind of talked about. And so I got back to the Bay Area and started practicing, and ended up having a practice for over 10 years. But I was a surgeon by day, business person by night, and really wrapped up in this whole notion of like, how can I really help people and understand people? And one thing I liked about plastic surgery was I had the opportunity to really, because it was a cash pay kind of business, I didn't have to see a patient every 10 minutes. I could see, 10 patients or less in a day and spend, half hour or more with each of them. And so really getting to know them and trying to understand them, and why did they want me to do something to them that would alter their appearance, or, have complications, or, just even the thought of like me cutting open their face. Like, I mean, why are you sitting in my chair right now? So understanding people and trying to figure that out was really a big part of why I got into medicine, and trying to advocate for patients and really do things, do the right thing for them. I turned away just as many patients as I operated on, by the way. That was a really important part of my practice, was making sure that I wouldn't do something to somebody that wouldn't benefit them. And we talked a lot about what could benefit and what wouldn't benefit. So really being there to advocate for the patient, even as someone whose livelihood was dependent on it. But I was in Silicon Valley. I was stuck behind an operating table day in, day out. And I'm an innovator. And so I was thinking of all these amazing ideas, everything from like how to make skate parks better in California to like how to design a better, suturing device, like everything in between. But I would sit there and operate all day and have these ideas and have no outlet or opportunity to actually act on them. So it started really eating away at me. And I was like, I'm great at what I do. I mean, I was pretty good. I was pretty good at what I did, and I've spent so much time and energy. It was like 15 years just to get there, right? And then all the investment in building a practice. And I said, I've done so much to get here. I couldn't possibly leave, could I? And I really started thinking about it, and I realized that I have so much Silicon Valley in my blood that I'm surrounded by all these conversations. To go out to dinner and hear people talk about like, building the next new, EMR platform, or like building, and you're like around all these conversations, and it's like, wow, I think I could make that better, or I could be a part of that. And so I started thinking about making the transition, and I ultimately did. I told my partners at the practice, I was still an owner in the practice, and I said, hey, I need to do a sabbatical or something, and figure out if I can really make this thing work, because I may want to change my career path. And so I started thinking a lot about the transition, and I became a student, to try to figure out how to do this. And I talked to lots of people, and I got mentorship. And I think that was a theme that started coming up yesterday, was mentorship and networking. And I talked to just about every possible person I could about every angle possible. Like, do I need an MBA? Good question. I don't know. Does an MD is not an MBA. I'll tell you that. We don't learn business at all in when we go through medicine. And do I need an MBA? I actually applied to Stanford Business School. I ended up retracting my application at some point, because ultimately I talked to somebody. It was one person, but it was really accumulation of a lot of advice I was getting. But there was one person who said, you don't need to do this. It's a waste of time. Don't waste 2 more years of your life getting another degree. Just get yourself in the door at one company and prove that you can do it. And that's like your spring training. And once you've gone through spring training, no one's ever going to question that you have or don't have an MBA at the end of your name because you've already proven that you can do it. And so that's one thing I was talking about yesterday in the hangout was, um, show your adaptability, right? Show how like you got put on a committee and you were able to, at the hospital or whatever, and within that work, or that you volunteer as a board member of a local, school or something. I did all that stuff to show that I could be a leader and I could be someone who's adaptable. And I'm not just a clinic monkey. Like I'm not just someone who knows how to put a stitch in somebody or change somebody's bandages or, dose out a medication, correctly. Like that's what they're going to think you are. But you got to prove that you can do it. Once you do it once, and it doesn't have to be at a business. Like I said, it could be volunteering, it could be at an organization or on a committee or something. Then you got to showcase that skill and say, look how adaptable I am. Look how I can be a leader. Look how I can apply myself in this hands-on clinic situation and over here for this group that's trying to innovate in the way we do processes or things like that, right? Um, and have faith. Like, oh my Lord, it's going to try your faith. At times you'll be like, wow, this feels really different than what I trained for and what I kind of thought I was going to be doing with my life. But you got to keep that faith. It's really, really important because you're going to have ups and downs. So I talked about the network. I talked about having confidence a little bit at the opener there when I talked about sitting around a table. You got to have a lot of confidence. And then you're going to create proof, right? That's what we just talked about. You're going to create proof that you can do this. And then that's just going to open up. That is the door opening. Okay. That is the door now open completely. You did it once and you can show that you can do it. And that's the story that everyone's going to see now. So then in true Silicon Valley fashion, I had job one, job two, job three. But they weren't all high turnover, but they could be. I mean, the rule of thumb in Silicon Valley, and it's probably starting to become true everywhere, as Silicon Valley is sort of like, there's just a diaspora of startups starting everywhere, whether it's Seattle or Austin or other places around the country, Boston. Uh, and so it's typical to get a job, build up a couple years of equity, and then flip it to another job. And so you'll see people's resumes where it's like 2 years here, 3 years here, year and a half here, 4 years here, 2 years here. And it's not because, and traditionally you'd think like, oh my God, that person must be like a horrible employee because then they just keep moving from place to place. And that's not really the case. It could be that they're just trying to build an equity portfolio and diversify across their equity. It could be that they are just trying to title jump and get as much title. Because usually when you go from one job to the next, you're going to ask for a title increase. Like, oh, well, for the last few years, I've been a medical director. Now I need to be a senior medical director. Now I need to be a VP of, medical operations. Now I need to be a head of whatever. So you're going to try to flip that, and that's one way to do it. Anyway, I started at a company called Health Tap, which is still around. I joined when there were about 10 people there. It was in downtown Palo Alto. And I don't need to describe what they did, but I was basically a medical director for them. And I made peanuts, man. It was like, I took like I owned my own practice during the recession after 2008. So I wasn't making a ton of money in practice, which is one of the reasons I was kind of doubting myself too. But man, you take a haircut. I think we were talking about this a little bit yesterday when you transition from uh, clinical practice to startup land because they don't have money to give you. They're on a runway and they're losing money. They're burning cash fast usually, and so they can afford to pay. Like when they bring you on, they're thinking like, oh my gosh, I hope I can pay this person for the next 6 months. So they're going to try to feed you equity and title. Sometimes you can ask for a title inflation. You probably won't get much if you ask for more money, especially at your first job. But if you can try to leverage that to say, well, in that case, title's free. Title's free to them. So if they offer you like a junior position, you can say, like, no, I'm actually I need a senior position. And if that's all you're asking for, they'll probably give it to you. So just a little hint there. But so I lasted about a year there. But that was it. That was my spring training. That's all I needed to flip it to another job. And then I got offered the first full-time physician position at 23andMe. This was way back when, prior to the FDA stuff, if anybody was following that. And first full-time physician in-house at a biotech company. They had no full-time physician presence. I couldn't believe it. So I got in there and became head of medical affairs and stayed there for over 10 years and built out a whole department essentially and brought clinical credibility to that company where it wasn't there before. And then after that, I transitioned into a short stint at a job. This is a classic example of people running out of cash. I joined a company called Cognoa, which is an AI company developing diagnostics and therapeutics for autism. and I became the head of their medical and clinical affairs and kind of head of their research team and trying to get market access and things like that. And I was only there for about 6 months because they ran out of cash to support the team. They had actually jettisoned the whole team after that because they couldn't they weren't monitoring their cash flow very very well. So these things happen. And then what happened next? You're kind of seeing it right now. So I knew that this bullet point here is while I was doing these things, I also started building my resume in terms of yeah, I was doing these jobs, but I also started giving back. I became a mentor. I started I joined the board of a school for deaf children out here in California, and I also joined the board of governors for the medical center at Stanford, and did that for 6 years, and helped to mentor and train medical students who are looking for career advice and things like that. So I put my time in. I volunteered a lot, and I think that's an important thing to do to build out your resume as well. It's kind of a freebie. Everyone's looking for volunteers, and that's kind of a nice way to say like, oh, I joined this board, or I volunteer on this committee, and you can see my leadership skills there. So did that, and then ultimately, yeah, it's like now I'm a co-founder of a company, and I just want to say that starting your own company is like really going into the deep end. So I know Olivia talks about this with some folks that she's mentoring, but you kind of have to decide like, yeah, am I trying to get a job or am I trying to create a company? And it might be one of if you're really passionate about creating a company like that's probably the right choice, but it's not the same as just getting a job. And it's I saw a quick a short on this on Instagram or YouTube, I can't remember, and it was basically saying like, you know, the biggest mistake in the world is that starting a company is going to be that thing that makes you money. It's you're just going to probably cost you a ton of money to try to get it going, even if it's just as simple as like a coaching business or a you know a consulting business. There's still just a lot of upfront costs in doing that. So and then you got to grow your business and stuff. So it's really deep end kind of stuff. But when you hear something that you think you're passionate about, like for me, it was shadow nurse and really feeling like this is a game changer that fits so much in line with my passions in terms of trying to support the medical community, but also do something that's going to really change the face of healthcare for patients and help advocate for patients and bring them the support that they need. For me, it's like it's now I live it. I eat, breathe, sleep, drink it all the time. And for me, I imagine that at some point this is going to be a profitable business, but for now, like that's all the profit I need. It really keeps me going, and it's a thrill. It's a thrill. It's a rush. If I added up all the hours I spend working on it, it would be embarrassing to probably say, because I think I have a life outside of this, but it kind of consumes you. And I knew that from when I started my medical practice as well, that it does kind of consume you. The last thing I'll say here is like I'm very happy and comfortable living my life in chapters, and you may want to reflect for yourself and see if that's true for you as well, because if you're somebody who's kind of resistant to that idea, and that you kind of just want to keep doing the same thing in the same trajectory and not really ruffle the feathers or go through any volatility, then maybe it's best just to kind of try to stay in that one kind of secure job position that maybe you already have, or maybe there's reasons you don't like it, but you'd be happy to keep doing kind of similar to what you're doing if it was with a different team or a different hospital or a different clinic. Um, but if you're excited about the idea of saying like looking back and saying like, oh, that was chapter one and now this is chapter two and it's totally different. It's all part of the same book, but like really kind of like taking the story in a different direction, or building on it in a different way, then maybe yeah, think about making the jump and all that. Also, I think I don't have any regrets in my life. People look at me and say like, dude, you spent like 15 years doing like really crazy hardcore training, and now you're like building a Silicon Valley, tech company. We call it tech company. There's reasons we do, but a health tech company. Um, like, was it worth it? Like, would you do that all again? I 100% would, because I couldn't sit here today and say that I'm here, that I'd be here absent any of the things that I did. I mean, everything I did in my life built up to this moment, right? And so if you believe that, then you can't. If you're happy where you are and you feel like you're on a good path, then there's no regrets. It's not like you wasted any time. You were building skills and proving to yourself that you could do certain things, and maybe it was fun or exciting, and that's all the reason you need, or maybe you just needed the money. And that's fine. No regrets, right? So for the 2 minutes I have remaining, I want to just quickly go through what I really want to talk about, because I gave the extended introduction, but hopefully some of those stories kind of help out a little bit. But quickly running through this, and then we'll get to Olivia's section. Um, Day one, so opening remarks, right? So day one, I think it was a huge success. We got a lot of good feedback from folks, a lot of smiles, and at the hangout, it was great to kind of recap and talk about things. I think what we learned from yesterday was that no matter what, you got to have grit. You got to look for the opportunities, and boy, there's opportunities all over the place. I mean, COVID, in the keynote address with Dr. Tong, he talked a lot about COVID and doctor on demand and how that kind of emerged from and double down on things that were made possible because of COVID. So there's silver linings to even things as tragic as that. And there's opportunity. And you can, I think Olivia said, where preparation meets luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And so you can create luck for yourselves if you're constantly getting ready and thinking about where the opportunities are. I think we saw a ton of diversity in our messages yesterday, just the topics themselves, but also sort of people's backgrounds and how they've navigated life and stuff and career, and a lot of emotion too. And I love that we're going there and kind of getting raw in a certain extent. I could see on some of the speakers' faces that they were really feeling what they were saying. And I think that's wonderful. And I know that as an audience member, you were probably feeling some things hit home too. The hangout, I know we talked a little bit about that already, but it's fun to get to know the people around you. All right. I mean, this is like we're kind of a big family in healthcare, and I think it was mentioned that it's a lot like the military. I really think it is, and I've been saying that a lot too over the years. We go through really challenging times, and we need to be there for each other. It's a lot. I've been on the wards, you folks. I know what goes on. I've been there. I see it happening. It's a dog eat dog kind of world a little bit, and people eat their young. But I encourage you to try to resist that. Get to know each other, be there for each other, help as much as you possibly can. We're all in this together. And that really goes to point number two, like why are Olivia and I doing this? Yeah, it's fun in a way. It's also a lot of work to build a company, but we're doing this because and all the other things that kind of go along with it. It's like we realize that there's a community here, that we think we have an opportunity to kind of get together and maybe help in some way, not only by providing an outlet for folks that want to do remote nursing and remote work and try something new and be a part of a fun, startup kind of vibe and all that, but also because we're doing this because we really believe in the well-being of this workforce and this community. We take it very, very seriously, and we realized early on that there's kind of a movement here, and we want to embrace that. And I don't know any other conference that's out there that has focused so much on these topics. And so I think as this is our kind of inaugural run at it, I hope that we'll do this again and keep building the community so that we can all be passionate and support each other on this mission, this journey, and go somewhere exciting, and do something amazing together. I think we can change healthcare if we put our minds to it, and we can change our own trajectory for sure. So that's really kind of a lot why we're doing this now. I can't really think of any other than the patient side too. I mean, I don't want to neglect that, we are uber passionate about patient advocacy and support and families and the trials and struggles that they go through and how people feel alone in their journey. And that's really moving. And we have a lot of passion for that as well. I just want to wrap up by saying how I think you should approach the rest of the conference, and maybe just this conference in general. I really think that there's value for the moment right now, just being a sponge. Okay. I don't think there's I don't think you're going to look back and say like, oh, there was this one bullet point on that one slide that really changed things for me. That's probably not going to happen. I'd like to think that we were like that cool that we can have like just power packed bullet points that change your life. But I think it's the whole thing. It's like sort of the whole umbrella of what this conference is about. Being here, chatting with people you're meeting in the lobby, getting people's phone numbers, getting their email addresses, kind of making a family, getting that effect, networking effect, hanging out at the breaks and stuff. Going back and looking at the videos, maybe of some of the talks, just remembering the speakers and thinking about the speakers and thinking about how you relate to or affiliate with or seem to be similar with the speakers and how maybe you could kind of, track what they did and how that could change your trajectory. And so just soak it up. That's it. I think that's how I would approach this. And then be the change, don't sit around and wait for change to happen to you. it's very rare that someone's going to reach out of the blue. This actually happened to me once in my life where somebody kind of reached out and said like, "Hey, well, you get recruiters who do this all the time who say like, hey, I looked at your profile online and you'd be a great candidate for this job." And they're like, "Did you really or not?" I don't really, I can't really tell. Like, but that did happen to me once where an actual person actually reached out to me and actually offered me a job. I was like, what just happened? But that's super rare. So you kind of have to be the agent, be the change yourself, and really get after it and have fun. Be intentional. Be intentional, like about your learning here today in this conference, and taking things you learn and say like, here's the things I want to do, and then do them and be intentional about it. And sometimes you have to be intentional about having fun too. And so don't lose sight of the fact that if you're doing something that doesn't bring you joy, man, that's tough. Sometimes we have to do that. We all know we've had to do it. Like, there's there's plenty of examples on the wards where you have to do something that you probably didn't wake up thinking you wanted to do. And then my last point, and we'll switch over, is do this in honor of yourself. Really be true to yourself, honor yourself, and think about all the people that came before you to help, that you're kind of riding on the shoulders of, to be in this moment and to have the things that you have with you. Your brain being probably the most important one, and then the tools you have around you that you can use. So honor yourself, do it for those who came before us, and think about those who are going to come after you. And I think that for things like, at least in my world where I'm trying to build this company, I can see how I think this is going to help people for years and years to come, and that really drives me. Knowing that I'm hopefully going to leave something behind that will keep helping generations after me to come. And so if you can find something that you're that passionate about that can do those things for you, and for others, even after you're not doing it anymore, then that seems like the perfect way to go. So I'll wrap it up at that point. I'm going to close out of this session and we will jump into the next one. Okay. Looking forward to seeing everybody at the next session, and good morning to everybody.